Glad you could join us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Healthy ecosystems clean our water, they purify our air, maintain our soil, and they regulate the climate, as well as recycle nutrients and provide us food. They provide raw materials for medicines and other purposes. They're the foundation of our civilization, and they sustain our economies. It's that simple. We cannot live without these ecosystem services. They're what we call our natural capital. So we open today's Earthfile with a story of the effect of drought on Gandhi village in Sokoto State and how this is connected with our natural capital. Do stay with us. Gandhi village is located in the southeastern region of Sokoto State in the northern part of Nigeria. The farmers here grow millet, guinea corn, beans, and ground rice. The arid, cracked soil could not provide moisture to sustain their plants this season, but they have to eke out a living by migrating to another area to make up for their losses.
We were in Padaman area here, and this is where we are spending our time for dry season farming. As you see here, some people plant beans, other groundnuts, and me I'm clearing here to plant wheat. And you see how we are breaking the land. Then we are going to arrange it into beds just for the wheat plantation. And we are going to water it.
Dahiru Gandhi is one of the influential farmers here in Gandhi village. He says the situation is getting worse each year with no solution in sight. He also says even those that farm most times incur losses because their plants drop and die, or even when they survive, they yield just a little.
We have to apply manure every year. If you apply it this year and next year you don't apply it, what you get this year, you will not get it for the next year. That is the problem of the encouragement. It's because of that our people are always searching for manure, and the fertilizer being given by the government is not enough for our people. Me, as I can say, I can consider if you're not a large-scale farmer, I'm a medium-scale farmer. But the fertilizer being given to me not to help me. And the resources I use to purchase fertilizer myself will not be enough for me. I just manage. This year, I try to see that I maintain this farm. Then the other year, move to other farm. But I can't be able to take care of all my farms. This area, from here up to our border with Maradon, Isa, and the Goronyo, is the same pattern of land. It's the same pattern of land. If you go deep, the area there is worse than this area. So this is how we are facing this problem.
Although Gandhi is not one of the communities in the front line of desertification in Sokoto State, the village loses an average of 3 kilometers of land to desertification annually. Because of this, there is a shortage of fertile land for farmers and grazing land for herdsmen. To forestall clashes between the two groups, Dahiru says the farmers have to pay their way out. For instance, he has to give the herdsmen an average of 2 bags of millet or 2,000 naira each week. This gesture has so far ensured that peace reigns in the area.
No, they can't come here because we can't allow them to enter, because we always have dialogue between Fulani and the farmers and the local government official for peace coexistence. And by the time we park everything here, you as a farmer, you are going to invite them to come to your farm. For hiring, you have to pay them weekly.
Oh, you pay them?
Weekly. They are not coming here just freely.
Okay.
They come here and their family, they remain here. They sleep here with their cattle and their family. By the morning, they move to Fadama area where to get water and food for their animals.
The experience of the people of Gandhi makes the case for the importance of protecting the natural capital. It is from this natural capital that humans derive a wide range of services often called ecosystem services, which make human life possible. The most obvious ecosystem services include the food we eat, the water we drink, and the plant materials we use for fuel, building materials, and medicines. There are also many less visible ecosystem services, such as the climate regulation and natural flood defenses provided by forests, the billions of tons of carbon stored by peatlands, or the pollination of crops by insects. Even less visible are cultural ecosystem services, such as the inspiration we take from wildlife and the natural environment.
If you go on the street, the only environmental issue is climate change. And we forgot to realize that sustaining nature provides 30% mitigation on climate change. So to me, that is important. And in our meeting with various stakeholders, we can see that there is a lot of work to be done, not only in terms of awareness raising, but in terms of practical ideas that are missing.
Ayodele Amin's Human Rights Advancement, Development and Advocacy Center and the Conservation International, a non-governmental organization, are exploring partnership opportunities to strengthen ongoing conservation efforts by the Federal Ministry of Environment. The NGOs are concerned by the failure of the country to value the potentials of its natural resources. They, however, disclosed their readiness to assist Nigeria in carrying out a survey of the nation's natural capital.
When government tries to make an effort to conserve nature or to address climate change or to clean up the Ogoni, it is being seen as a government project, and it lacks respect. And at the end of the day, it's either destroyed or not actually supported. We have seen situations in many states whereby drainage were constructed and people put debris in the drainage. So this kind of lack of ownership is a problem. And those are the kind of narrative we want to come in and see how we can change, working in collaboration with the government and other stakeholders.
With financial capital, when we spend too much, we run up debt, which if left unchecked can eventually result in bankruptcy. With natural capital, when we draw down too much stock from our natural environment, we also run up a debt, which needs to be paid back. For example, by replanting clear-cut forests or allowing aquifers to replenish themselves after we have abstracted water. If we keep drawing down stocks of natural capital without allowing or encouraging nature to recover, we run the risk of local, regional, or even global ecosystem collapse. Poorly managed natural capital, therefore, becomes not only an ecological liability, but a social and economic liability too. Working against nature by overexploiting natural capital can be catastrophic, not just in terms of biodiversity loss, but also catastrophic for humans as ecosystem productivity and resilience decline over time and some regions become more prone to extreme events such as floods and droughts. Ultimately, this makes it more difficult for human communities to sustain themselves, particularly in already stressed ecosystems like Gandhi in Sokoto State, potentially leading to starvation, conflict over resource scarcity, and displacement of populations.
We don't have the consciousness that by doing that, in the long run, relate to protecting our lives. We don't relate environment to protection of life. Of course, the Sierra Leonean knows better now, okay? And Nigeria needs to learn from that so that we don't see the consequences before we start taking action.
Ultimately, nature is priceless. However, it is not valueless. And there have been many studies that have calculated natural capital's value in financial terms. For example, street trees in California provide over $1 billion per year in ecosystem services through atmospheric regulation and flood prevention. And Mexico's mangrove forests provide an annual $70 billion to the economy through storm protection, fisheries support, and ecotourism.
We need to make a business case for the protection of the environment. I'll give you another good example. Nobody has looked at this. You have manufacturing plant in Ibadan, for example, that manufacture drinks. They are not one, there are so many. How did they get the fresh water that comes to them? That must have been coming from a particular community, a forest, or somewhere. Okay? Now, if we are able to identify that, we can find that out through vital science. It's scientific. So if community A is providing 20 or 30% of the fresh water, because we take it for granted that when we dig borehole, there is fresh water. We are just taking it for granted. That fresh water is coming from somewhere, okay? And that is conservation. So if we get a community to say, okay, you need to protect the source of your fresh water, and if you just add like half a kobo on your drinks that goes to that community to preserve conservation, they will protect the environment with their life in exchange. Because the point is that if that water ceases, if the natural environment is kind of destroyed, they will find alternative way of getting water, and that will be costly.
The business case being put to the private sector is that it is in their interests to use their natural capital assets sustainably in the short term as a way to guarantee long-term profits. By depleting natural capital now, they put their supply chains and future productivity at risk. The ecosystem service value of tropical forests is estimated at $6,120 per hectare per year, while the cost of losing forests at the current pace amounts to $2.5 trillion per year if all ecosystem services were accounted for. Despite this clear macroeconomic case, the total yearly forest loss averages about 30 million hectares per year, representing the surface of one football field of forest being destroyed every 3 seconds. This continued loss and degradation of forests represents a massive market and policy failure.
There is a lack of understanding of the importance of our natural capital. And people fail to understand the interrelation and the interdependency of our natural capital, poverty, and development. And because the economics have failed to come up with a model and to place a price on our natural capital, the lack of appreciation has led to depletion of forests, the degradation of our mangroves areas, and it's in many places it is only in now that the governments are waking up to the fact that you cannot, and let me emphasize, you cannot replace some of these natural capital when they have been exploited by mining companies or other extractives.
If managed well, natural capital is a long-term asset. It does not depreciate and can represent a cost-effective way of achieving multiple development goals, such as food and water security, climate change mitigation, and adaptation.
If you cannot put a number on the natural resources on which your economy depends, surely how can you monitor it? If you cannot monitor it, how can you add value? If you cannot add value, how can you ensure, how can you link it to sustainability? Meaning you are going to keep this stock for the benefit of the present generation to the future generations. If you don't have the number, that question cannot be answered. There is no way you can add value on something whose value you don't even know right from the beginning. Absolutely. There is no choice. We have to do something.
The recurring question is, why should this be critically important to all of us? The reality is that understanding overall stocks of natural capital and monitoring stock changes is vital at a national level. This understanding informs policy interventions and highlights whether countries are really creating new wealth and well-being or simply converting one form of capital, which is natural, into another. Africa alone could save as much as $103 billion every year by harnessing its natural capital in a sustainable way. Money that could then be pumped back into alleviating poverty, providing access to clean energy, and improving education and health. A significant share of these precious resources is lost through illegal activities. In addition, sub-Saharan Africa currently spends $35 billion every year on food imports, a vast amount when you consider that only 3.5 million hectares out of a possible 240 million hectares of land suitable for wetland rice cultivation have been exploited. For instance, Africa loses an estimated $195 billion annually of its natural capital through illicit financial flows, illegal logging, illegal trade in wildlife, unregulated fishing, illegal mining, environmental degradation and loss. These activities continue to happen in the continent despite the efforts taken to address them.
It is vital for our countries, first and foremost, to ensure that we have the appropriate governance mechanisms, both at the local level, the national, and the regional level. That is key in the sustainable use of our natural resources and in harnessing our natural resources. If we don't have the appropriate structures in place, then our people will continue to experience poverty.
The economic incentives for Africa to better manage its natural resources are compelling, as the continent alone could annually save as much as $103 billion, money that could fund development programs.
If we look at the major challenges of Africa, we can see that energy is a major challenge. We can also see that youth and employment is a major challenge. Harnessing in a sustainable way the natural capital is a great opportunity to really promote sustainable energy. It is a great opportunity to create jobs and green jobs, because transition to green economy should go hand in hand with the sustainable harnessing of natural capital. We need law enforcement, the commitment, the political will is there. What is missing is technology, the deployment of technology, and affordable and adaptable technology for local ownership.
The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has highlighted renewable energy as one of the key solutions for coping with climate change. Africa has a great opportunity to make a progressive clean switch from fossil fuels to renewables, as it boasts of ample sunshine and wind which do not emit any greenhouse gases or pollution into the atmosphere. In addition to its importance to climate change, there is another compelling reason to develop renewable resources in Africa, and that is rapidly growing energy demand. The unsustainable use of natural resources can result in an increase in a country's GDP while it actually becomes poorer. Legislators can play a central role in making the transition to the sustainable economy by recognizing and taking into account the value of biodiversity and of ecosystem services through the exercise of their legislative oversight and budgetary responsibilities. They can advance this vision by pushing for the implementation of wealth accounting and valuation of ecosystem services as practical tools to operationalize the vision of sustainable development.
We cannot continue top-down policy making unless we talk to the local communities, unless we integrate the different sectors of the economy, unless we talk to the marginalized economies and underprivileged sectors of our societies, then we're not going far. We have to capture the priorities, the interests of the different segments of the population. I think this is key. The other is putting in place the right institutional setup. Corruption has to be addressed. There are vested interests of different stakeholders which has to be addressed. People in high places or in the private sector, they have an interest in maintaining the status quo. And because achieving sustainable development for them may mean that they lose power, they lose financial resources, then they have to be addressed, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to deal with them. Transparency is key, accountability is key to achieve sustainable development. I think these are all, and we acknowledge all of that, and I think a number of African countries now are taking steps to address this. Africa, and we all know, is the richest continent on the globe. Yet, unfortunately, we are still the poorest. Something is wrong.
Natural capital depletion is set to become a major challenge for businesses in the 21st century as population growth and climate change exacerbate the demands on Earth's resources. Given the severity of the risk, natural capital should be addressed at the board level and valued and managed in the same way as financial capital. Environmental experts are warning that businesses cannot continue to take natural assets for granted, and an urgent change in mindset is needed. Businesses risk facing water shortages and scarcity of key raw materials, which will disrupt the supply chain and make them vulnerable to price volatility.
Some of the gaps we identify is in terms of creativity. Okay? You see committed staff, committed civil servants, but the space and the creativities are a challenge in terms of thinking outside the box, in terms of ideological framework, in terms of community engagement, because that is a big problem that mainstream throughout, either in the parliament, in the executive, even with specialized body, that is there.
Businesses are now being urged to consider their dependencies and impact on critical natural resources and ecosystems with a view to managing or mitigating these impacts. Undertaking these analyses is of particular relevance to multinational companies with extensive supply chains in emerging markets, especially in regions already facing water shortages and air pollution issues. Environmental impact hotspots often lie outside of a company's direct operations, falling under the control of suppliers or further down the value chain, the end consumer instead. Natural capital accounting not only helps mitigate risk, but embedding sustainability considerations into decisions and strategy also helps promote the long-term resilience of the business. Furthermore, it can lead to product and process innovation, open new revenue streams and market opportunities, and provide brand differentiation. It is clear that over time, companies will make radical changes to their environmental accounting for resource use along their entire value chain. Companies that embrace natural capital accounting are likely to come to grips earlier with the major challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Since Rio Plus 20 in 2012, 68 countries have supported a communique that calls on governments, the United Nations system, international financial institutions, and other international organizations to strengthen the implementation of natural capital accounting. Understanding the impact of commercial decisions is where companies need to become better informed in order that the consequences of actions can be better managed.
Capital has often been thought of narrowly as physical capital, the machines, tools, and equipment used in the production of other goods. But our wealth and well-being also relies on natural capital. If we forget this, we risk degrading the services that natural ecosystems provide, which support our economies and sustain our lives. These services include purifying our water, regulating our climate, reducing flood risk, and pollinating our crops. By simply taking care of nature, we're taking care of ourselves. Well, that's our program for the day. Thank you for being a part of it. We hope to be back with you next week, but should you have any comment or question, our inbox, earthfile@channelstv.com is available. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the rest of the crew here in Lagos, it's bye for now.